There exists within every soul a silent design, a sacred geometry of abundance drawn by the infinite mind before the first breath was taken. It is the secret pattern of plenty, not fashioned by effort, nor granted by chance, but imprinted in the very fabric of one's being. This divine blueprint of prosperity is not a treasure to be hunted in the outer world. It is the living architecture of the inner self. Every cell of the body, every thought that stirs in the quiet chambers of the mind, echoes the same decree. You were created to express supply, not to seek it. In the stillness of creation, the Spirit conceived a perfect image of each soul's destiny, an image radiant with peace, freedom, and overflowing wealth. But as the world's noise grew louder, this image grew faint. Humanity forgot its own design. People began to chase shadows of gold, to trade the inner kingdom for outer noise, and to mistake toil for worth. Yet the blueprint never vanished. It lies beneath every anxious heartbeat, beneath every whispered fear of lack, waiting for remembrance. When one turns inward and speaks to that divine pattern with faith, the pattern stirs again, as though a sleeping garden had heard the rain. The divine blueprint does not respond to logic or to struggle. It responds only to recognition. The moment you know not hope, not wish, but know that abundance is your natural state, you begin to align with the law that governs all increase. You no longer labor to create wealth. You awaken to what has already been given. Like sunlight revealing what was always there, faith draws forth supply from the invisible to the visible. The Spirit never withholds. The infinite does not measure. Lack exists only in consciousness. When the mind is clouded by fear, the blueprint cannot be seen clearly. The flow becomes distorted, and one calls this distortion poverty. But when the clouds of disbelief part, when gratitude replaces grasping, the pattern shines again, with golden symmetry. It shows the way quietly, effortlessly to right work, right ideas, and right opportunity. To live by the divine blueprint is to understand that wealth is not a number in the bank, nor a collection of things. It is the free movement of life itself through your thoughts, words, and actions. When you think richly, you live richly. When you speak richly, you draw to yourself the companions, conditions, and resources that mirror that inner richness. Each generous thought you send forth becomes a line of light, connecting your invisible pattern with visible results. Imagine a sculptor who has never seen his own sketch. He strikes the marble blindly, hoping it will resemble something worthy. That is how most people create their lives, unaware of the perfect design already held for them in the mind of the infinite. But once the sculptor remembers the image, his hand moves with certainty. Each stroke reveals what was hidden. So it is with the soul that remembers its divine prosperity design. You need not create success from chaos. You only uncover it by removing the veils of fear and disbelief. This remembrance begins in silence. Sit in the sanctuary of your mind and declare, "There is a divine pattern of abundance within me. It cannot be destroyed, delayed, or denied. I now call it forth in perfect order." Speak these words not as a plea, but as a decree. The blueprint responds to command, not complaint. It listens for the tone of authority, the tone that knows itself as one with the source. When you speak from that center, life obeys. There is no outer force that can alter this design. Economy, circumstance, or opinion have no power over a consciousness aligned with divine law. When others speak of recession, the one who knows his blueprint walks in peace. When others fear loss, he gives thanks for infinite replenishment. The outer world mirrors the inner conviction, and so even in barren seasons, he finds hidden streams of supply. Every desire you hold that is pure and harmonious is a signal from the blueprint itself, reminding you of what already belongs to you. The yearning for freedom is proof of freedom's seed. The longing for beauty is the whisper of beauty's manifestation. The wish for prosperity is not greed. It is the divine design urging you to express more of itself. For the infinite desires to reveal its fullness through you, not for your pride, but for its own glory made visible in human form. If one could see the unseen architecture of their life, they would behold a vast network of radiant lines, thoughts of truth, words of faith, deeds of love, forming bridges to every needed blessing. But when fear, envy, or doubt are entertained, those lines dim and tangle. To restore clarity, one must realign the mind with the original pattern through praise, gratitude, and steadfast vision. Say often within yourself, "My divine design of abundance now unfolds. All channels are open, all resistance dissolves. Infinite wealth flows to me and through me in perfect harmony. In the garden of spirit, nothing is withheld, but every flower must bloom according to its pattern. The rose does not strive to become a lily. The lily does not envy the oak. Each fulfills its design by being true to itself. Likewise, each soul prospers by living in the pattern chosen for it by the infinite. The comparison of one life to another is the root of most poverty. But when you honor your unique design, you step into the effortless rhythm of your own abundance. This divine blueprint of prosperity is both a promise and a law. The promise is that you were born supplied. The law is that your thought must agree with that supply. When you think limitation, you step outside the pattern and experience shadow. When you think expansion, gratitude, and certainty, you move back within the current where all provision flows. The universe does not punish or reward, it reflects. Therefore, the wise soul guards every thought as a sacred brushstroke upon the canvas of manifestation. When doubt arises, remember that the blueprint never erases itself. It cannot be lost, only ignored. Even in the darkest moment, when every visible sign seems to vanish, the pattern remains intact beneath the surface. It waits for the word of faith, the spark of remembrance. The instant one declares, "I return to divine order," the light resumes its course, the channels reopen, and what was blocked begins to flow once more. To live according to the divine blueprint is to walk in constant assurance that nothing can be missing from your life, for the infinite has already provided all that pertains to your perfect joy. You need not ask for abundance, you need only to agree with it. And the agreement is silent, calm, steady, an inner knowing that does not waver before appearances. Your heart is the architect's table upon which the plan rests. Your thoughts are the hands that bring it forth. Each time you choose faith over fear, peace over anxiety, giving over grasping, you draw another line of light across the plan, and wealth takes form in the visible world. The hidden pattern grows luminous, the air thickens with possibility, and what once seemed far becomes close. What once seemed impossible becomes natural. The divine blueprint of prosperity is the soul's eternal inheritance, unbroken, unbought, and unbound. It is the signature of the infinite within you, quietly shaping every circumstance, every encounter, every unfolding event, into perfect supply whenever you align with it in thought and word. Every creation in the visible world begins as an image in the invisible. The thought you hold steadily before your inner eye becomes the mold into which the substance of life must pour itself. This is the law of mental equivalence, the divine correspondence between thought and form, between idea and manifestation. The outer world is but a mirror, reflecting the pictures impressed upon the form, inner mind. As within, so without. What the heart believes, the world must show. The universe is obedient, exact, and impartial. It does not choose what to create. It simply multiplies the seeds that consciousness provides. When the seed is lack, the harvest is limitation. When the seed is wealth, the harvest is abundance. Each thought, no matter how fleeting, is a decree. The mind is the workshop where invisible patterns are shaped, and the conditions of one's life are nothing more than the solidified impressions of those patterns. There is no exception to this law. The man who constantly envisions debt, even while praying for wealth, creates more debt. The woman who fears illness, though she declares health, invites illness by the vividness of her mental picture. The law cannot be deceived by words without feeling. It responds to the vibration of belief, the living conviction behind the word. The secret of abundance, therefore, lies not in outer striving but in establishing a mental image so radiant, so complete, that the outer world cannot help but conform. The law of mental equivalence asks one question only: what picture lives in your mind? If your mental screen is filled with worry, the universe assumes that is your chosen creation. If it is filled with gratitude, calm assurance, and joyful expectation, the universe multiplies that peace into visible supply. Thought is a magnet that draws from the unseen storehouse all that matches its kind. Every image, once formed, becomes clothed with energy. It begins to attract its likeness from the field of possibilities. You may not see it at first, but forces begin to move. People begin to appear. Opportunities begin to align. The delay between thought and form exists only to test faith. When faith remains steady, the form must come. When doubt intrudes, the mold shatters and the substance disperses. Thus, your only task is to hold the image unwaveringly until it becomes the equivalent of what you desire. 2. Master this law. One must learn to think in pictures of completion rather than desire. Desire often implies absence. To say, "I want wealth," is to affirm that you do not yet have it. But to say, "I am one with infinite abundance," is to stand inside the completed image. The universe hears the tone of realization, not the cry of longing. When the image in the mind becomes as real as the object itself, creation is finished on the inner plane, and manifestation on the outer is certain. See yourself already supplied. Imagine the feeling of freedom, the ease of giving, the serenity of knowing that every need is met before it arises. Dwell upon this image until it becomes natural, effortless, until the vibration of wealth feels like the air you breathe. The law of mental equivalence works through repetition and feeling. The deeper the emotion attached to an image, the faster it crystallizes. If the mind is filled with confusion, the images become distorted, and life mirrors that distortion. Therefore, clear the mental field daily, sit in silence, and sweep away all pictures of fear, criticism, and limitation. Replace them with images of harmony, joy, and beauty. See your affairs arranged in divine order. See your body radiant with vitality. See your relationships bathed in mutual love and respect. The more clearly you can visualize these scenes, the sooner they take substance. When one understands this law, he becomes the conscious architect of destiny. He no longer waits for chance or circumstance to bless him. He creates the pattern and watches as life fills it in. There is a sacred responsibility in knowing that thought builds reality. For every careless fear, every casual resentment is a stone placed in the foundation of one's future. Guard the gates of imagination as you would a treasury. Allow no image to dwell there that you would not wish to experience in form. This law does not favor the few. It belongs to all, as universal as sunlight. Every man and woman carries within the mind the same creative power. The difference lies only in awareness. The awakened soul knows that imagination is divine instrument, not idle fancy. When imagination is sanctified by faith, it becomes the womb of miracles. Every vision held with purity and conviction must externalize according to its kind. There is no limit to what can be formed through this law, for thought is infinite in its reach. The mind that believes in small supply will manifest accordingly, while the mind that recognizes infinite substance draws from endless reservoirs. If you think in thousands, you will receive thousands. If you think in millions, millions will find their way to you. But beyond numbers lies a greater truth that wealth is the expression of spiritual wholeness. When your inner image reflects completeness, the outer world naturally brings forth provision, beauty, and ease. Many attempt to use this law while still holding the consciousness of struggle. They affirm abundance, yet continue to picture delay. They say, "It will come," which subtly confesses that it is not here. The wise speak from fulfillment. It is done. It now manifests through perfect channels. Such words, charged with assurance, seal the image in divine substance. The universe has no choice but to answer the tone of certainty. The law of mental equivalence also governs the invisible traffic of emotion. A mind filled with resentment or fear sends out distorted images that draw corresponding results, but a mind filled with praise, gratitude, and forgiveness shines with clarity. Gratitude, especially, is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. It affirms the reality of the unseen gift before the eyes behold it. To give thanks for supply not yet visible is to mold that supply into form through faith. Train yourself to see abundance everywhere. Notice the overflowing branches of trees, the ceaseless rhythm of the tide, the endless renewal of morning light. Nature itself is a teacher of mental equivalence, for it reveals the pattern of infinite replenishment. The seed knows no fear. It holds the image of the tree and fulfills it unfailingly. You too are a seed of the infinite. Hold the image of your own fullness, and all life conspires to bring it forth. In moments of doubt, return to the image. Do not wrestle with conditions. Reshape your thought. The outer must follow the inner, as shadow follows light. When appearances contradict your vision, rejoice, for this is the test that seals your mastery. Stand firm in the picture of plenty, and the law must adjust circumstances to match it. The invisible cannot fail its reflection. Each time you choose a thought, you choose a future. Each time you paint an image of abundance, you open a gate for the substance of life to pour through. The mind is the brush, the world is the canvas. Every stroke shapes destiny. Think richly, see clearly, speak boldly, for these are the instruments by which the hidden becomes seen, the invisible becomes gold, and the word becomes flesh. There are streams of abundance moving through the unseen world, carrying every form of supply your heart could ever imagine. These channels are not carved by human effort, nor can they be blocked by circumstance. They belong to the law of divine provision, operating silently beneath the noise of appearances. When one aligns the mind with faith instead of fear, these invisible channels begin to open, and supply flows as naturally as breath. The universe does not deliver prosperity through logic, it delivers through law, and that law responds to consciousness, not condition. Imagine standing beside an underground river, hidden, powerful, eternal. You cannot see it, yet you can hear its distant hum. It moves beneath the surface of your life, waiting for a point of entry. The thoughts you think, the emotions you hold, and the words you speak either keep the earth sealed or open new cracks through which the water of causes, provision rushes forth. When you live in fear, you compact the soil. When you live in faith, you make it porous. Faith is the instrument that digs wells into the invisible. Through these wells, the unseen supply finds its way to the surface of your life. Most people believe that money or opportunity must come through known means, a certain job, a particular person, a visible source. But that belief binds the flow. The universe is not limited to visible channels. When one door closes, 10 unseen ones wait in silence. Divine law cannot be confined by circumstance. It is infinite in expression. The moment you stop insisting on how your good should arrive, you release the energy that allows it to find you through the perfect path. The invisible channels of supply are woven through everything: ideas, coincidences, sudden inspirations, unexpected invitations, even delays that conceal divine timing. You may think a setback has halted your progress, but the law is only redirecting the flow to a greater outlet. When you trust this, you walk in calm certainty even amid apparent lack, for you know that beneath the desert lies a river, and that the river never runs dry. To perceive these hidden channels, one must cultivate the inner eye. The outer senses report lack, the inner sense reveals abundance. When the outer voice says, "There is no way," the inner voice whispers, "The way is already made." This whisper is the language of spirit, and to hear it, one must still the clamor of the world. In quiet trust, the heart perceives supply moving through unseen corridors, assembling every piece of provision long before it appears in form. Money is only one expression of supply, but true supply is life itself, flowing, renewing, abundant. It moves through health, through love, through peace, through right ideas. The one who recognizes this sees money not as the source, but as a messenger of divine order. When you remove fear from your relationship with money, you stop chasing shadows and begin communing with substance. The invisible channels open because you have remembered their source. Every act of faith is a key. Each time you speak words of trust instead of worry, you open another gate in the unseen world. Each time you bless what you have, even when it seems small, you multiply its current. Gratitude is the magnet that draws invisible streams into visible form. The grateful heart does not beg, it receives. It knows that every gift, seen or unseen, comes from the same infinite fountain. There are laws more exact than mathematics governing this unseen economy. The law of vibration states that all things move according to the frequency of thought. Fear sends forth a low vibration, attracting limitation. Faith vibrates high, summoning its equal abundance. You cannot hold a thought of poverty and expect wealth to pass through your hands, for the currents are mismatched. Adjust the tone of your inner world, and the channels will align themselves with ease. Sometimes, the invisible channels open through people. A word spoken by a stranger, a letter arriving at the perfect moment, a meeting that feels accidental. These are not coincidences, but manifestations of divine coordination. The universe moves its pieces silently, arranging circumstances for the one who trusts. While the doubter sees randomness, the believer recognizes orchestration. Other times, supply appears through ideas. One inspired thought can contain a fortune. An idea has no weight, yet it holds infinite potential. When you are in tune with divine law, ideas arrive like messengers of gold. They may whisper, "Try this," or "Go there," or "Create that." Follow them. The invisible channels of supply often take the form of inner direction long before outer evidence appears. Those who act on inspired thought are those who drink from hidden rivers. The greatest obstruction to supply is fear, fear of not enough, fear of loss, fear of dependence, the constant of people. Fear shuts the door to the unseen. It says, "I must make it happen by myself," and in that moment, the self separates from source. But faith says, "The source is working through me," and suddenly the walls fall away. Where fear hoards, faith gives. Where fear grasps, faith releases. Where fear sees emptiness, faith perceives the fullness of invisible supply. To open these channels, begin each day with remembrance. Infinite substance flows to me now. All channels are open, all doors are free. What is mine by divine right comes to me easily and perfectly. Speak these words not as hope but as declaration. Words, when spoken in authority, are commands to unseen forces. Life obeys conviction. The invisible begins to stir, arranging paths, prompting hearts, aligning events to bring your decree to pass. Do not measure progress by appearances. The invisible works in silence, beneath the soil of perception. A seed does not sprout the instant it is planted, but beneath the surface, the law is already at work, roots forming, life gathering strength. So it is with every decree of prosperity. The roots of supply are forming in the unseen long before the shoots appear in the visible. Patience is faith, resting in motion. The invisible channels of supply do not open to the anxious or the doubtful, but to the serene and certain. Anxiety constricts, certainty expands. When you rest in trust, you vibrate in harmony with divine order, and the flow becomes natural. You find yourself at the right place at the right time. You overhear what you need to hear. You meet who you need to meet. Everything conspires for your good, not through effort, but through alignment. One must also learn the sacred art of letting go. The more tightly you clutch at visible means, the less room there is for invisible ones to operate. Release the need to control how supply arrives. Give freely, think freely, live freely. The law cannot fill a closed hand. The open palm receives. To give, without fear, is to affirm that the fountain is endless. What you give away in love circles back multiplied, for love and supply share the same current. There are those who pray for abundance while silently believing they are unworthy of it. Such inner contradiction blocks the channels. The law cannot move where there is denial of worth. You are the vessel through which divine abundance expresses itself. Therefore, you must believe yourself deserving of the role. When you see yourself as part of the flow, not the owner of wealth, but the instrument of it, the river quickens. At times, the invisible channels work through apparent loss. A job ends, a door closes, a relationship fades, yet these are not endings but redirections. The law removes the lesser to make room for the greater. When you bless the closed door, you show the universe that your faith is not in form but in source. Immediately, new channels begin to open, carrying supply that would have been obstructed had you clung to the old. You are never without supply, only without awareness of it. The channels are infinite, extending through every breath, every heartbeat, every corner of creation. When you awaken to this truth, you cease to fear shortage. You know that even if every visible door were shut, the unseen would open 1,000 more. The universe does not operate on scarcity, but on overflow. To walk in alignment with it is to live in ceaseless provision, guided by the rhythm of invisible abundance. In the beginning was the Word, and from that Word came all creation. Every sound uttered in faith carries within it the same creative essence that called worlds into form. The power of the spoken word is not poetic symbolism, it is spiritual law in motion. Words are living currents of energy, invisible messengers that travel into the unseen realm and shape matter according to their vibration. When you speak, you command the substance of life itself. The tone of your speech carves the channels through which your destiny flows. The careless phrase, the fearful complaint, the anxious remark, these are seeds dropped into fertile soil, and the soil does not question what it receives, it multiplies. Likewise, the words of faith, joy, and certainty summon a harvest of beauty. The tongue is the rudder of the soul's ship. It steers consciousness toward the harbors of wealth or the storms of lack. The mind may hold many images, but it is the spoken word that gives them form. To speak is to declare, and to declare is to make law. The universe listens not to silent wishing, but to the vibration of command that issues from a heart aligned with truth. When one speaks from fear, he gives power to the very condition he dreads. When one speaks from faith, he breathes life into unseen abundance. The law of the spoken word works with absolute precision. Every phrase charged with emotion becomes a decree stamped upon the ether. The subconscious mind, obedient and impartial, accepts it as instruction. When you repeat, "I never have enough," the subconscious organizes circumstances to prove you right. When you affirm, "I live in overflowing supply," it moves every resource necessary to match your decree. Speech is not merely expression, it is invocation. It calls forth from the invisible realm that which corresponds to its nature. There is a tone within the voice that determines the level of power it carries. Words spoken mechanically have little effect, but words spoken with conviction strike the chords of creation. The tone of belief vibrates through unseen dimensions, gathering substance to itself. It is not the length of prayer that matters, but its intensity. A single sentence spoken in absolute faith can overturn mountains of limitation. To speak from the center of certainty is to move in rhythm with the original command, "Let there be." Silence prepares the ground. Speech plants the seed. One must therefore guard the lips as sacred instruments. Idle, chatter, gossip, criticism, and self-pity scatter energy and weaken the current. Words are like coins, spend them with purpose, for every one returns multiplied. Speak only that which you desire to see manifested, and refrain from rehearsing the language of defeat. To say "I can't" is to erect a wall. To say "I can" is to open a door. Many believe that thought alone is creative, and indeed it is. But thought is the silent architect, while speech is the builder who raises the walls. Without the word, the thought remains unformed, a shadow blueprint. When thought and word unite, creation becomes inevitable. The universe responds to sound because sound is vibration, and vibration is life. The very atoms of existence arrange themselves according to the frequency of spoken decree. This is why affirmations spoken aloud carry such force. They imprint not only upon the mind, but upon the field of energy that surrounds the speaker. To understand the power of speech, consider the difference between saying, "I hope I will prosper," and declaring, "I prosper now." The first delays, the second fulfills. Hope implies distance, declaration affirms presence. When the word is spoken in the present tense, it announces that the thing desired is already complete in the invisible. The universe then rushes to clothe that invisible pattern in visible form. This is the secret behind every miracle of manifestation. The words spoken in realization, not request. The ancient teachers knew that words carry spiritual substance. Every culture that has touched the divine recognizes the sacredness of utterance, mantras, blessings, invocations, decrees, psalms. When repeated with reverence, these words awaken dormant powers in the soul. They align the speaker with cosmic rhythm, dissolving resistance and opening channels of abundance. The same principle applies to daily speech. Each affirmation of truth, each expression of gratitude, each blessing given freely sends a ripple through the invisible, summoning its likeness to return multiplied. The law of the spoken word also demands precision. Ambiguous speech creates ambiguous results. Say clearly what you mean and mean what you say. The subconscious takes words literally. To say, "I'm dying to have that," may sound harmless, but the subconscious hears dying and accepts it as suggestion. Words of life should never be mixed with words of decay. Train your tongue to become an instrument of truth, and your world will reflect that order. When one truly grasps this law, speech becomes sacred ceremony. Every sentence is a prayer, every utterance a spell of creation. The wise speak little but with power. They do not scatter words like dust in the wind. They release them like arrows aimed at destiny. Each day, they pronounce blessings over their affairs, their work, their companions. They do not speak of lack but of sufficiency, not of delay but of perfect timing, not of obstacles but of divine opportunity. And because they speak from conviction, life echoes their decree. The spoken word also heals. When words of truth are uttered with love, they penetrate the unseen layers of the body and correct the vibration of discord. To declare "I am whole" is not denial of illness, it is affirmation of divine pattern. The body, hearing this word, begins to realign with its blueprint. The same power that governs healing governs wealth. To speak "I am supplied" is to awaken the dormant channels of provision. The universe forever listens, waiting for the note of certainty that unlocks its treasures. Even silence can be filled with the echo of spoken truth. Once a word of faith has been uttered, it continues to vibrate long after sound has ceased. It lingers in the atmosphere, shaping events and drawing corresponding forces until fulfillment occurs. That is why one should never retract a declaration made in faith. Doubt may arise, appearances may contradict, but the decree stands. The word, once spoken in power, does not return void. It moves in unseen pathways, performing the purpose for which it was sent. It is wise to begin each morning with conscious speech to frame the day before it unfolds. Declare, "This day unfolds in divine order. Everything I need is already prepared. My words are seeds of light, and every seed bears good fruit." Say it with conviction, for conviction charges words with creative fire. Throughout the day, bless rather than criticize. Bless the work of your hands, bless the money in your care, bless those who cross your path. Each blessing multiplies the current of supply flowing through you. At night, cleanse the atmosphere of your speech. Withdraw any words of fear or complaint you may have uttered. Replace them in thought with words of harmony. All is well, all is perfect, all is unfolding as it should. Thus the soul sleeps in peace. and the subconscious spends the night building according to the new decree. The next morning, evidence begins to appear. To live under the law of the spoken word is to live consciously. You become aware that your mouth is the gateway of creation. You no longer waste words in trivial complaint or idle jest. You choose them as carefully as a musician chooses notes. Each word becomes a chord of power, and the melody you play becomes the song of your life. The higher the tone of your speech, gratitude, joy, certainty, the higher the results. Speak abundance, and abundance must appear. Speak peace, and discord dissolves. Speak faith, and invisible walls crumble before you. The unseen world moves at the sound of command. Every phrase of truth reverberates through the corridors of spirit, calling forth that which was already prepared for you since the foundation of creation. When you know this, you cease to ask timidly, you declare boldly. For to speak in faith is to know that what you call already exists in substance, waiting only for your word to take shape. There is a secret rhythm to abundance, a quiet current beneath every form of prosperity. It flows smoothly, endlessly, without struggle or obstruction. But when the human mind resists through fear, doubt, or impatience, that current is diverted, slowed, or blocked. The law of non-resistance teaches that wealth, health, and joy come not through force, but through surrender to divine order. Resistance is tension against the flow of life. It is the soul saying, "I must make it happen," instead of, "It is already done." When resistance dissolves, the stream of supply moves freely again, carrying everything that has been delayed by anxiety or control. Non-resistance is not weakness, it is divine intelligence in motion. To resist is to fight with shadows, but to yield in faith is to align with the greater power that governs all creation. A river never argues with a stone, it flows around it and continues its journey. Likewise, the wise do not struggle against circumstance. They move with grace through every seeming obstacle, knowing that even detours are part of perfect direction. In stillness, they find that life carries them to the exact place of their good without the exhaustion of striving. When one resists, one tightens the invisible cords that bind energy. Fear clenches, impatience strains, anger hardens, and the flow of abundance cannot pass through such tension. The universe responds to openness. It cannot fill a closed vessel. The one who lives by this law learns to relax inwardly, even when the outer world trembles. He says, "I trust the unfolding," and that trust becomes the key that opens hidden doors. Non-resistance is not passive submission, it is spiritual composure. It is the inner knowing that the infinite is arranging every detail far better than human will ever could. The law of non-resistance governs not only wealth but every dimension of life. When you meet opposition with peace instead of reaction, the energy of conflict dissipates. When you bless instead of curse, you lift yourself above the vibration of discord. This is how miracles occur, not by overpowering evil, but by refusing to dwell within its frequency. Non-resistance is spiritual alchemy. It turns friction into flow, burden into blessing, delay into divine timing. Every difficulty that appears before you is an invitation to practice this law. When a bill arrives before the money, the untrained mind tenses. It fears, plans, struggles. But the one who knows divine law says quietly, "This too is a messenger, I will not resist it." In that calm acknowledgement, the energy of solution awakens. A new channel opens. The need is met through means unseen. For resistance binds, but acceptance liberates the forces of supply. The air itself teaches this truth. You do not struggle to breathe, you simply allow. The lungs expand and receive. Prosperity operates by the same rhythm. Inhale through faith, exhale through gratitude. The more naturally you breathe with life, the more effortlessly it sustains you. Yet humanity has forgotten how to breathe in spirit. It holds its breath through worry, suffocating the very current that would renew it. The practice of non-resistance is a return to divine respiration, letting go, allowing, trusting the unseen intelligence that moves all things toward harmony. When you resist people, you resist your own lessons. Each encounter is a mirror reflecting the state of your consciousness. The harsh word, the delay, the rejection, these are not enemies but instruments. They reveal where faith falters, where peace still depends on outer approval. To practice non-resistance is to bless every contrast, to say, "This too serves my unfolding." In that moment, what seemed an adversary becomes an ally, and what seemed loss becomes release. To live by this law requires discipline of mind. The world trains you to fight for every gain, to push, to compete, to defend. But divine law teaches stillness. It whispers, "Yield, and you shall prevail." Yielding does not mean surrendering your dream. It means ceasing to oppose the way in which it unfolds. When a flower blooms, it does not command the sun or soil. It simply opens. Its fragrance is the result of effortless cooperation with the laws of growth. Non-resistance is not indifference. It is the highest form of faith. It declares, "I will not waste energy resisting appearances, because appearances are not truth." The unseen order is always working, even when the senses perceive delay. When storms come, resistance says, "I must fight the wind." Faith says, "I will adjust my sails." In that adjustment lies mastery. The current carries you faster when you stop paddling against it. Many confuse resignation with non-resistance. Resignation says, "There is nothing I can do." Non-resistance says, "Everything is already being done." The first springs from defeat, the second from divine confidence. When one practices this law, even in small ways, life begins to reorganize. The traffic jam reveals a moment of rest. The lost opportunity unveils a better one. The silence after a door closes becomes the space where inspiration is born. Every emotion of resistance has its root in fear, fear of loss, fear of delay, fear of the unknown. But fear is faith inverted. It is belief in disorder rather than order. When you reverse the current and choose to trust, fear dissolves like mist in sunlight. The mind grows still, and in stillness the inner voice can finally be heard. That voice says, "All is in perfect sequence. Your supply is moving even now through invisible channels." And indeed, once the tension releases, evidence begins to appear. Non-resistance also governs giving and receiving. When you give grudgingly, you resist the cycle of increase. When you give freely, you become a clear vessel through which abundance circulates. The miser resists and withers, the giver flows and flourishes. To release with joy is to affirm, "I trust that what leaves returns, multiplied." And so it does, for non-resistance opens the circuit of divine exchange. The same principle applies to inner healing. The body holds tension wherever the mind resists. When you relax mentally, the physical form follows. Healing is not achieved by fighting disease, but by harmonizing with the pattern of wholeness that already exists. The moment resistance ceases, the natural current of life restores balance. What doctors call recovery, the soul calls remembrance, the remembrance of divine order. The practice of non-resistance can begin with the smallest things. A delayed plan, a harsh word, an unexpected change. Instead of reacting, breathe. Say quietly, "I allow this to work for my good." You will feel a shift, subtle but powerful. The energy that was trapped in reaction begins to flow again. Doors open, circumstances rearrange themselves. You realize that life was never against you, only mirroring your own resistance. Non-resistance is also the key to intuitive guidance. The still mind hears what the noisy mind cannot. When you cease struggling to control outcomes, the inner wisdom rises to the surface. It whispers direction so softly that only the peaceful can hear. The one who resists drowns in confusion. The one who yields moves in grace. Divine ideas arrive effortlessly when you are still enough to receive them. Every act of trust strengthens the current. Every moment of surrender widens the channel. When you no longer resist the way things are, you make space for them to become what they are meant to be. In that openness, divine intelligence pours itself freely through you, bringing supply, harmony, and success without strain. For life is not conquered, it is allowed. There is a sacred rhythm that underlies all creation, the eternal exchange between giving and receiving. It is the heartbeat of divine order, the pulse by which life renews itself endlessly. Every tree that releases its fruit, every wave that yields to the next, every breath that leaves the lungs to make room for another, all obey this invisible rhythm. When a soul understands this law, lack disappears, for giving and receiving are not opposites but the two halves of one sacred current. To give is to acknowledge abundance, to receive is to honor the flow of it. Both are acts of faith, and both sustain the balance of universal wealth. The spirit of giving and receiving is not bound to coins or possessions. It is an attitude of consciousness, a recognition that life itself is circulation. Money is only one form of the divine breath moving through material channels. The same law governs love, friendship, opportunity, joy, and inspiration. When one withholds in fear, that flow becomes constricted. When one gives freely, the current expands. The miser's hand closes around his gold and finds emptiness, while the generous heart opens and discovers that every gift multiplies as it leaves. To give in truth is to give without calculation, without the shadow of expectation. The universe keeps perfect record. Nothing given in love is ever lost. Each act of generosity sets unseen forces in motion, weaving new connections, opening hidden channels of return. You may never see the line by which your gift returns, but it will, for it cannot escape the law. Like a seed planted in fertile ground, it may lie unseen for a season, yet beneath the soil of time it grows, gathering form until it bursts forth multiplied. The spirit of giving is not measured by amount but by consciousness. A small coin, given in joy, carries greater power than a fortune given in fear. The vibration behind the act determines the harvest. When you give because you fear punishment or seek reward, you are still bargaining with the divine. But when you give because your heart overflows with recognition of infinite supply, you move into harmony with the source itself. You become a living channel through which abundance flows to others, and through that same channel it must return to you. Receiving is equally sacred, though often misunderstood. Many souls are willing to give, yet they block the current by feeling unworthy to receive. To refuse a gift, to shrink from praise, to deny prosperity out of false humility, all are forms of resistance. The infinite cannot pour into a vessel that refuses to open. To receive graciously is to complete the circuit of divine exchange. When you say with gratitude, "Yes, I accept," you honor the giver and the source alike. The river of abundance cannot flow in one direction. It must circle, like breath, outward and inward, giving and receiving as one motion. Gratitude is the invisible bridge that joins the two. It is both the song of giving and the echo of receiving. To give with gratitude sanctifies the act. To receive with gratitude multiplies the blessing. A grateful heart keeps the current alive, even when nothing visible has changed. It declares, "I am already supplied," and the law responds with evidence. Gratitude does not wait for increase, it creates increase. The spirit of giving and receiving operates beyond material form. A kind word, a moment of listening, a silent prayer, these too are offerings. When you give encouragement to one who falters, you pour divine substance into the unseen. When you forgive, you release stagnant energy that had imprisoned your own abundance. Each act of love is currency in the higher economy of spirit. The treasures of heaven move through unseen channels, yet they manifest in the visible as harmony, opportunity, and provision. To live by this law is to see every exchange as holy. The merchant who sells in fairness, the artist who shares beauty, the worker who gives excellence, all are participants in divine circulation. Nothing is mundane when done in the spirit of giving. Every task becomes a prayer of prosperity, every interaction a chance to extend blessing. When you work with joy, you are not merely earning a living, you are releasing energy into the stream of supply, and the stream must return to you bearing fruits according to your inner state. Many imagine that giving diminishes them, that to part with what they have is to lose. Yet the spiritual law reveals the opposite. What is withheld decays, what is shared multiplies. Hoarding is the illusion of safety, born of fear that the source may fail, but the source cannot fail, for it is infinite. When you give in trust, you prove your faith in that infinity. You say to the universe, I know more will come, and the universe responds, so it shall be. There is also wisdom in knowing how to give. True giving uplifts. It never enables weakness, nor seeks recognition. The motive must be pure. Give quietly, joyfully, and without attachment to outcome. The greatest gifts often go unseen by the world, a smile offered in darkness, a word withheld that would wound, a prayer spoken for one who would never know. The Spirit measures not the size but the sincerity of the act. When you give from the essence of peace, you align with divine will, and the blessing flows in perfect proportion. The rhythm of this law can be observed in nature itself. The ocean gives vapor to the sky gives rain to the earth gives fruit to man, and man returns again to the soil. There is no possession, only circulation. When humanity interrupts this rhythm through greed, stagnation follows. But when harmony is restored, abundance returns. So too in individual life, when energy ceases to circulate through generosity, the river of prosperity begins to dry. The moment one begins to give again, even a little, the waters of supply rise anew. Sometimes, the giving required is not of material things but of release. You may need to give up resentment, pride, or control. These invisible gifts are the most powerful, for they clear the channels through which greater good can flow. When you release what no longer serves you, you make space for the divine to refill your hands. The one who clings to the past cannot receive the future. Letting go is the highest form of giving. It is the surrender that allows renewal. Every breath you take is a reminder of this divine exchange. You cannot only inhale, you must exhale. You cannot only receive, you must give. The one who fears to give is like a man who holds his breath to conserve air he suffocates. Life demands circulation. The more freely you participate in it, the more freely it sustains you. The ocean does not worry about losing its waves. It knows each one that reaches the shore returns as another. When practiced daily, the spirit of giving and receiving becomes a quiet habit of thought. You bless the food before you eat, honoring the unseen labor that brought it to your plate. You give thanks to the air, the light, the warmth that touch your life without asking for return. You recognize that you are constantly being given to by the sun, by the earth, by the kindness of others, by the very breath that animates you. This awareness makes generosity natural, for you realize you are not the owner of abundance but its channel. In times of lack, the impulse of fear is to withdraw, to withhold, to guard the little that remains, but this is the very act that deepens the lack. When you open your hand, even slightly, and give in faith, you break the spell of limitation. The universe rushes in to fill the vacuum you have created. The giver becomes the receiver, and the circle begins again. For every act of faith in giving, 1,000 unseen doors swing open in the invisible world. The wise understand that wealth is a flow, not a possession. To hold it too tightly is to lose it, to release it is to renew it. They move through life as stewards, not owners, and in their stewardship lies freedom. They know that as they pour out, so shall they be poured into, pressed down and running over. Their hearts are vessels without lids, always open, always filled. The more they give, the more life entrusts to them, for life trusts those who trust it. Thus, the spirit of giving and receiving is not a law to be obeyed with effort, but a truth to be lived with grace. It is the recognition that abundance is not something to acquire, but something to express. To give is to acknowledge your oneness with Source. To receive is to let the Source acknowledge its oneness with you. The rhythm continues, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat, gift by gift, forever circulating through the vast, unending current of divine supply. There is one power, one intelligence, one substance behind all things, the infinite source from which every form, every opportunity, every blessing arises. To align with this source is to return to the origin of all wealth and peace. Every problem of lack, fear, or struggle stems from a single illusion, the belief in separation. The moment consciousness drifts away from its divine center, it begins to see itself as an isolated being, forced to strive and compete for what already exists in infinite measure. But when the mind turns back toward its source and says inwardly, "I and my supply are one," the entire field of life reorganizes itself to reflect that truth. Alignment with the infinite source does not mean reaching towards something distant or unseen. It means remembering what has always been true. The ocean does not beg the tide to return, for it knows the rhythm of the moon commands it. The flower does not plead for sunlight, it simply opens in its direction. So too must the soul open to the divine current that flows through everything. The infinite is not somewhere else, it is the life moving through your breath, the intelligence guiding your thought, the quiet strength that stands behind every act of faith. When you are aligned with it, you do not chase abundance, you become its channel. The infinite source does not know limitation. Its nature is expansion, expression, and overflow. To align with it is to take on its qualities, to think as it thinks, to speak as it speaks, to give as it gives. When the mind holds thoughts of fear or contraction, it falls out of harmony with this great rhythm. Fear says, "There is not enough." The infinite says, "All is full." Faith bridges the gap between the two. The moment you think a thought in harmony with divine abundance, the current of supply begins to move. It moves not from outside to inside, but from within outward, for the infinite works through the consciousness of the individual. To align with the source, one must first still the restless voice of the personal will. The personal will says, "I must plan, I must earn, I must make this happen." The divine will whispers, "All is already provided." The ego acts as though it were separate from the current of life, trying to swim upstream against its own supply. But when you release this resistance and allow the divine intelligence to guide your steps, you discover that everything you have been chasing was already flowing toward you. Surrender is not weakness, it is recognition of the greater power that animates all. Alignment is achieved through awareness. You cannot align with what you ignore. Begin each day by turning inward and acknowledging the presence of the infinite within you. Say silently, "There is one life, one power, one source, and I am part of its expression." Let that truth sink into every fiber of your being. Feel it as certainty, not wish. As you carry this awareness into your actions, you find that intuition replaces struggle. Right ideas come unbidden, doors open naturally, and circumstances bend to the rhythm of divine order. The infinite source never withholds. If there appears to be delay, it is only because consciousness has stepped out of tune. Imagine a radio slightly off its frequency, the music still plays, but the static distorts it. Adjust the dial, and the melody becomes clear. Likewise, when you tune your thoughts and emotions to the vibration of divine abundance, gratitude, faith, peace, the static of fear fades, and the pure signal of supply reaches you unbroken. The source was never absent. The receiver simply needed adjustment. Every moment of anger, envy, or worry moves consciousness away from the source. Every moment of praise, joy, and thanksgiving draws it back. That is why gratitude is one of the highest forms of alignment. Gratitude does not beg, it recognizes completion. When you give thanks before evidence appears, you affirm unity with the infinite. You say, "I already have what I need, for the source within me never runs dry." This inner knowing calls the invisible into visibility. The infinite expresses through infinite channels. You need not dictate how supply should come. The ego tries to limit the divine by naming specific avenues, this job, this person, this opportunity, but the infinite holds countless ways to fulfill the same desire. When one door closes, it only directs you to another, more fitting one. Alignment means trust in the intelligence of the unseen. You do your part holding the thought, speaking the word, acting in faith, and the source arranges the rest with perfect precision. There is also alignment in action. To act in harmony with the infinite is to act without fear of loss. It is to give generously, speak truthfully, work diligently, and move peacefully. Every action becomes sacred when performed from the awareness of divine unity. Even mundane tasks take on a glow of purpose when done in remembrance that the infinite works through you. When you sweep the floor with peace, you are sweeping away inner resistance. When you speak kindly to a stranger, you are moving in rhythm with the infinite's love. Every small harmony invites larger harmonies to unfold. To align with the source is to relinquish the illusion of control. The infinite does not need your anxiety to function. It only asks your cooperation. The farmer does not force the seed to grow. He provides the conditions and trusts the unseen power within the soil. You too must prepare the soil of consciousness, keep it free from weeds of doubt, nourish it with faith, and expose it to the sunlight of joy. Growth happens of itself when alignment is steady. There is a peace that arises when one knows this law deeply. You stop measuring your worth by results, for you understand that results are reflections, not origins. You begin to live from cause rather than effect. The cause is always the infinite within. The effect is whatever appears outside. When you dwell at the level of cause, no outer turbulence can disturb your serenity. You may watch storms pass, but you stand rooted in the unshakable truth that the source within is your unfailing supply. Alignment also dissolves envy and comparison. When you know that every soul draws directly from the same infinite well, you cease to covet another's portion. What belongs to one does not diminish another. The infinite is not divided by distribution, it expands through expression. The success of another becomes proof of the law, not threat. You rejoice, for their demonstration reminds you of your own limitless inheritance. To live in alignment is to listen. The infinite speaks constantly through intuition, through dreams, through sudden awareness. The voice is gentle, never forceful. It guides by suggestion, not command. But to hear it, the mind must be quiet. Noise of worry, resentment, or self-importance drowns it out. Each time you pause in stillness and say, "Speak, I am listening," you attune yourself to divine instruction. These impressions may seem subtle, but they lead to perfect timing and provision. When you move through life aligned with the infinite, you begin to notice that effort gives way to ease. You no longer strain for outcomes, for you know that results flow naturally from right consciousness. You plant ideas in peace and allow them to mature in their own time. You give without fear, receive without guilt, act without haste. The anxiety that once drove you begins to dissolve, replaced by quiet confidence. You become like the sun shining without striving, giving without exhaustion, radiant simply by being. The infinite source is love expressing as abundance. Every time you think a loving thought, you are in alignment. Every time you act in harmony, you expand the current. Love is the vibration of the infinite made visible. It heals, attracts, and multiplies. When love fills your consciousness, every need is met before it is spoken. Love is alignment itself, the magnetic thread connecting the human heart with divine supply. This alignment cannot be forced, it is felt. It is the gentle realization that you are not a beggar at the door of heaven, but the living expression of its wealth. The infinite moves through you as easily as wind through an open field. The field does not direct the wind, it allows it. So too, The soul that allows becomes the instrument through which the universe sings its melody of abundance. When you dwell in that awareness, you find that all things come to you not through chase, but through grace. Faith is the golden bridge between the unseen and the seen, the invisible law that turns thought into matter and word into form. It is not hope, nor wish, nor blind optimism, it is divine certainty in motion. Faith is the quiet knowing that what is desired already exists in the realm of the unseen and waits only for consciousness to recognize it. The evidence of the senses may contradict it, yet faith remains unmoved, for faith sees through appearances into essence. It looks not at what is, but at what must be, because the law of the Spirit cannot fail its own reflection. Faith begins where reasoning ends. The human mind demands proof before believing, but the divine mind believes first and thereby creates proof. This is why those who live by faith seem to move through life under a different law. Doors open for them where others see only walls. Provision arrives where others see lack, and peace endures where others feel storm. They do not ignore reality, they transcend it by aligning with a higher one. The world of appearances bends itself to the will of the unseen, the moment belief becomes absolute. The outer world is the echo of inner conviction. To have faith is to impress the substance of life with unwavering trust. The moment you decide that your good is certain, invisible forces begin to rearrange themselves accordingly. Circumstances shift, people are moved, events unfold, and soon, what was invisible stands before you clothed in form. Faith is the blueprint of creation, drawn in the ether before the house appears in stone. It is the silent architect that instructs the material world how to build. Every great demonstration begins with faith beyond evidence. The farmer sows seeds without seeing the harvest, yet he trusts the law of growth. He does not dig up the soil each day to check if the roots have formed. He waters, he waits, and he knows. This is the attitude of the soul in tune with divine order. Faith does not panic during delay. It recognizes that gestation is part of manifestation. When you have truly believed, you no longer question timing, for you know that every result unfolds in perfect sequence. The senses are servants, not masters. They show only the surface of reality. Faith penetrates beneath the surface into the heart of truth. When the senses say, "There is no way," faith replies, "The way is already made." When appearances declare loss, faith answers, "Nothing can be taken from what is infinite." When fear cries that the door is closed, faith smiles and walks through the wall. Faith is not emotional defiance but spiritual perception, the sight of the soul, recognizing what already exists in divine substance. To cultivate faith beyond evidence, one must train the inner eye to look upon completion instead of absence. Speak as though the thing desired were already here. Give thanks as though the manifestation were already visible. Feel the joy of possession before it appears. The universe mirrors your vibration. When you radiate fulfillment, it delivers fulfillment. When you radiate lack, it delivers lack. Faith tunes the heart to the frequency of completion, and the world echoes accordingly. Doubt is faith in reverse. It believes in limitation instead of abundance. Every time you doubt, you lend power to delay. Doubt is the fog that obscures the bridge between the seen and unseen. Faith clears the fog and lets the light pass through. The wise guard faith as a treasure more valuable than gold, for faith is the currency of creation. One who holds it steadily can purchase all good from the storehouse of the infinite without coin or effort. The law of faith operates whether or not one believes in it, just as the law of gravity holds all things to the earth. The unbeliever, thinking himself practical, says, "I will believe it when I see it," and thus never sees beyond his own belief. The believer says, "I see it in spirit. Therefore, I will see it in form," and the universe obeys. This is not superstition but spiritual mathematics, cause and effect within consciousness. What is impressed inwardly must be expressed outwardly. This is the unchanging formula. Faith does not argue with appearances, it does not attempt to reason with fear or analyze the mechanics of miracle. It simply knows. Knowing is the still point at the center of manifestation. To know in the spiritual sense is to rest so deeply in conviction that contradiction loses all meaning. When you know, you stop asking when or how. You release control, and that release becomes the signal for the universe to act. The power of faith lies in its constancy. It must not flicker like a candle in the wind of appearances. One moment of strong belief followed by hours of worry weakens the vibration. The law responds to consistency. Hold your faith as the sun holds its light, steady, unwavering, undistracted by clouds. Appearances are temporary shadows cast by old thoughts. When new faith remains firm, those shadows dissolve. Faith beyond evidence often requires silence. When the seed of belief is young, protect it from the winds of other people's doubt. Speak little of your intentions until they are rooted in certainty. The unawakened will question and reason, and their skepticism can weaken your focus. Keep your faith secret until it becomes strength. Then speak, and your word will carry authority. The law of manifestation obeys faith that is felt, not argued. To live in faith is to walk as though guided by an unseen hand. Each step unfolds the next. You do not see the whole staircase, but the light moves with you. The mind of the world says, "Be realistic," but faith answers, "Reality begins within." The unseen is more real than the seen, for the visible changes, but the invisible endures. When you trust the unseen, you align with the eternal, and the temporary world must yield to its pattern. Faith transforms even adversity into progress. The soul that trusts knows that every delay conceals a divine adjustment. What seems withheld is often being perfected behind the veil. Faith says, "This too is good, though I do not yet understand it." Such words release tension, and the invisible law moves freely once more. The impatient mind says, "It must come now," but faith says, "It is already done." And because it is already done, the results appear in perfect time. When you exercise faith beyond evidence, you become a magnet for the miraculous. You begin to notice synchronicities, messages, symbols, opportunities arising at just the right moments. The infinite speaks through these alignments, confirming your trust. They are the footprints of divine law moving through your life. The more you notice and give thanks, the stronger the current grows. Gratitude is faith made visible. It says to the universe, "I recognize the fulfillment already here." Faith is also the highest form of love, for it trusts the infinite without demand. It believes in good even when appearances show the opposite. It forgives before the apology, blesses before the harvest, thanks before the gift. This unconditional trust dissolves fear and aligns the heart with the rhythm of creation. When faith fills consciousness, the outer world becomes transparent to the inner vision. What once seemed uncertain becomes inevitable, for faith has already claimed it in the unseen. The practice of faith is simple, though not always easy. Each time you are faced with uncertainty, choose to speak the word of certainty instead. Each time fear whispers its argument, answer with, "I know that divine order governs this situation." Continue until peace replaces anxiety. That peace is proof that alignment has been restored. Peace is the evidence of faith. It is the vibration of fulfillment before form appears. To walk in faith beyond evidence is to live as a creator rather than a reactor. It is to move from the center of power instead of the circumference of circumstance. The one who trusts in divine law no longer chases outcomes. He attracts them through the magnetism of certainty. The invisible becomes his servant, shaping conditions to match his conviction. And though others may call it miracle, he knows it as the natural operation of spiritual law, the inevitable response of the infinite to unwavering belief. Faith beyond evidence is the quiet authority that gathers every law of prosperity into one living chord. It is the consent of the soul to what the infinite has already finished. When sight is thin and sound is uncertain, faith remains. steady as a lighthouse whose beam does not argue with fog. It is the golden thread that runs through the tapestry of all the teachings, binding them into a single garment you can wear in every season of your life. Faith does not perform a trick, it remembers a truth. It does not strain to bring heaven to earth. It recognizes that heaven is the ground beneath every step you take, and in the recognition, form concedes to spirit and rearranges itself accordingly. Faith beyond evidence is the keeper of the map within you, called divine blueprint of prosperity. The blueprint is precise, radiant, prefigured by the infinite before your first breath, yet it lies mute until belief speaks its language. Faith is the lamp that reveals its lines, the warmth that softens the wax seal, the patient eye that studies its curves until the route through today's uncertainty becomes obvious. When you consent to the blueprint with a calm yes that needs no proof, the hidden bridges appear, the timing clears, and the next stone rises beneath your foot exactly when you need it. You discover that supply is less a hunt and more a homecoming, less a pursuit and more a remembering of the corridors already laid out for your feet. Faith is also the heat that sets the mold under the law of mental equivalence. The image you hold is the mold. Faith supplies the fire that cures it. Without faith, pictures are chalk on a doorstep, easy for the first wind to scatter. With faith, the picture hardens into instruction, and life obeys. Faith does not peek at appearances to decide if the inner picture is allowed. It simply returns to the image, touches it with gratitude, and says again with unwavering tone, "It is already accomplished." The universe always answers the tonality of conviction. The more you dwell in the completed image, the more the world scurries to catch up to what you have already accepted. Faith beyond evidence is the dowser's wand that finds invisible channels of supply. It does not interrogate the desert for its water. It listens. Beneath the sand of circumstance, rivers are running. Faith senses their hum. You feel an inner nudge to write a letter, to walk a different street, to call a forgotten friend, to sit in quiet instead of pushing one more plan. You follow, and seemingly random stones roll aside. What looks like coincidence is choreography. What looks like delay is redirection to a wider riverbed. Faith, refusing panic, keeps the soil porous so the underground stream can break the surface exactly where you stand. Faith is the electricity behind the power of spoken word. Words without faith are shells on a shore, pretty and empty. Words charged with faith are living seeds. When you say, "It is provided now," with the tone of realization rather than request, you strike a tuning fork in the unseen. The note travels and gathers its own orchestra. Your sentence keeps sounding long after your mouth is still, organizing a procession of means that match its pitch. Faith teaches your tongue to love silence, until it can speak from center, or for silence oils the hinge of the mouth, so the door of decree swings cleanly and nothing squeaks with doubt. Faith practices the gentle art taught by the law of non-resistance. It is the unclenched hand, the softened gaze, the exhalation that stops bargaining with time. The wind shifts, and faith trims the sail. It does not shout at the weather. Resistance tries to pry open a bud. Faith warms the soil and lets the bud choose its morning. Acceptance is not passivity but partnership with precision. You yield your hurry and discover that alignment moves faster than anxiety. The moment you stop trying to force the gate, you see it was a sliding door all along, and the panel moves without sound. Faith nourishes the sacred tide within, the spirit of giving and receiving. It refuses the lie that the sea will empty if one wave reaches the sand. Faith gives because it recognizes circulation as the nature of life. It receives because it honors the law's need to complete the circuit. It blesses the coin going out and the coin coming in, and by blessing both, it removes the last trace of fear from exchange. Faith teaches the heart to be a window, not a vault, to be a fountain, not a cistern. In that confidence the current thickens, and what passes through you grows sweeter, richer, more abundant with every loop of its return. Faith is the tuning dial for alignment with the infinite source. The station of abundance is always broadcasting. Faith sets the needle against the static of appearances. No bribe is needed, no ritual of worthiness. You adjust your inner sound to gratitude, and the music grows clear. Alignment is not a sprint toward God, but a stillness in God. Faith holds you there. You stop praying as if the source were afar and begin to speak as one who shares its breath. Right ideas arrive without clamor. Doors open without rattling. You become less a manager of outcomes and more a keeper of atmosphere, and the atmosphere of certainty is the strongest gravity. Prosperity knows faith. Beyond evidence does not ignore facts. It places them in correct subordination. Facts are weather. Faith is climate. Facts change their clothes hourly. Faith abides. When the number in the ledger gawks at you, faith smiles back and refuses panic's audition. If a plan unthreads, faith does not scramble to reweave it with the old thread of fear. It reaches for a new thread, bright and sure. If a voice outside declares lack, faith answers only with a blessing and returns to work, for blessing is a hammer that drives nails of order through the soft wood of seeming chaos. Practice makes faith audible. Each dawn, let the breath be your teacher. Inhale certainty, exhale resistance. Whisper quietly, I am one with infinite supply. My channels are open and orderly. What belongs to me by divine right appears in perfect time. Not as a plea, not as superstition, but as the honest report of an inner condition. Let gratitude light the hearth. Thank you for provision. I see, and provision I do not yet see. Then go about your tasks as if the decree had already arrived, because in the only place that matters first consciousness it has. Let your pace carry the aroma of trust. The world reads the perfume of your stride and rearranges to match it. When doubt taps your shoulder, answer it with work done in peace. Fold the laundry of your life with reverence. Send the message. Balance the account. Make the call. Doubt starves in the presence of faithful motion, and if fear grows loud, let love answer, for love is faith's native language. Say within, I choose the larger story. I choose the blueprint over the blur. I choose the rhythm over the noise. Then act once more from that choice. Every small fidelity is a hinge on which great doors swing. Let money be messenger, not monarch. Receive it respectfully, send it purposefully. Let opportunity be a garden, not a battlefield. You are not competing for soil, you are cultivating your plot according to the design already inscribed in your roots. In your work, give excellence freely, not to purchase favor, but to mirror the source whose habit is overflow. In your speech, retire the phrases of shortage and let the sentences of sufficiency take their place. In your body, practice rest as an act of wealth, for nothing is richer than a calm and ordered nervous system that trusts the divine timetable more than the clock on the wall. When the path narrows, faith listens for the hidden staircase. When the night deepens, faith expects the horizon's thin silver. When the harvest seems late, faith checks the soil, not the sky, and waters again with gratitude. Gratitude is faith tasting the future and calling it delicious now. Praise is faith's architecture, building rooms before furniture, laying welcome at thresholds you will soon cross. Blessing is faith's weather, softening hard fields and drawing birds that scatter seed with their wings. You are not asked to perform heroics, you are invited to keep a promise. The promise is that inner truth precedes outer proof, and outer proof gladly follows inner truth. Keep the climate steady, keep the image bright, keep the word clean, keep the hand open, keep the sail trimmed, keep the dial tuned. This is the simple geometry of wealth in spirit, the blueprint recognized, the image completed, the channels trusted, the word decreed, the resistance released, the tide of exchange honored, the union with source remembered, and through every one of these, the unwavering thread of faith drawn taut through the eye of each day. Let your rooms carry the feeling of answered prayer. Let your ledger read like a hymn of order. Let your phone glow with right names at right moments. Let your sleep be the workshop of quiet arrangement. Let your rising carry the ease of one who is escorted. Let your giving be a river warming the banks it passes. Let your receiving be a bow that dignifies the giver and the giver. Let your errands be sacraments, your deadlines be gateways. Your challenges be tutors whose sternness hides a smile, meant only for those who persevere in gentleness. And if you stumble, do what the faithful always do. Return to the blueprint and bless its lines. Return to the image and polish its edges. Return to the channels and speak to them as living friends. Return to the word and choose the sentence with fire in it. Return to non-resistance and drop the rope. Return to circulation and let something good leave your hand. Return to alignment and sit until the dial hums clear. Return to faith beyond evidence and stand once more where outcomes begin, where the invisible is not a rumor but a realm, where wealth is not a hunt but a lighted house whose door has always been slightly ajar, waiting for you to notice and walk in.